Captain Elena Martinez felt the Airbus A330 shudder at 22,000 feet over the Atlantic when both engines failed simultaneously. The cockpit erupted in alarms as warning lights painted the instrument panel red. Ryan, her first officer, grabbed the emergency checklist with shaking hands while Elena immediately took control of the aircraft. The aircraft climbed 400 feet before the speed bled off completely. "What was that?" Ryan asked with panic creeping into his voice. "Catastrophic dual-engine failure," Elena replied with mechanical precision. "We have no thrust, and we are falling out of the sky with 183 passengers depending on us." The emergency procedures they had drilled countless times offered no solution for this scenario. Both engines were completely dead, hydraulic pressure dropping rapidly, and they were beginning a powerless descent toward the cold Atlantic waters below. Elena's military training kicked in as she assessed their impossible situation with the calm focus that separated exceptional pilots from those who merely followed procedures. Elena studied the navigation display with razor focus while the Airbus A330 continued its deadly descent. The nearest airport was 300 miles away, far beyond their gliding capability. Ryan ran calculations frantically, his voice breaking as he announced their fate. "We cannot reach any major airport. We are going to crash in the Atlantic." Elena refused to accept defeat. "There's a chain of small islands northwest of here. Wake Island has an emergency runway long enough to land an A330. Ryan checked the distance with trembling fingers. "That is 185 miles away. We cannot glide that far without engines." "We can if I manage our energy perfectly," Elena replied with the confidence that came from years of combat flying. "Start dumping fuel from the right-wing tanks. Maximum flow rate." "Do it now." Ryan hesitated for a precious second. Elena's voice cracked like a whip. Ryan activated the dump valves immediately. Fuel streamed from the right wing in a white mist as Elena prepared to attempt something no commercial pilot had ever tried before. "But if we dump fuel in a very specific way, I can create a weight imbalance that will force the plane into a banking turn without engine thrust. We can use gravity and momentum to change our heading." "Change heading to where?" Ryan asked desperately. Elena pointed at the navigation display. "There's a chain of small islands northwest of here. Wake Island has an emergency runway long enough to land an A330. Ryan checked the distance again. "That is 185 miles away. We cannot glide that far. We can if I manage our energy perfectly. Start dumping fuel from the right wing. Maximum flow rate." "Do it now." Ryan hesitated. Elena's voice cracked like a whip. Ryan activated the dump valves. Fuel streamed from the right wing in a white mist. Elena felt the plane respond as the weight distribution changed. She used the remaining hydraulic pressure to bank the aircraft right. The nose started to swing around. The plane was turning but still falling through 18,000 feet. "Stop the dump," Elena said. "Now dump from the left wing." Ryan obeyed immediately. The weight shifted again. Elena used the momentum to steepen the turn, bringing the nose around until they pointed northwest. She leveled the wings. 16,000 feet. Descent rate 2,200 feet per minute. Ryan ran calculations on his display with desperate precision. "Our glide ratio gives us maybe 165 miles. We're going to fall short by 20 miles. Elena studied the wing configuration. The flaps were retracted. If she extended them just 5 degrees, she could change the wing's lift coefficient. Reduce the sink rate without creating too much drag. Extend flaps to 5 degrees. Ryan reached for the flap lever with a shaking hand. The flaps extended slowly. The aircraft shuddered as the aerodynamics changed. The descent rate decreased to 1,800 feet per minute. Ryan recalculated frantically. "We can glide 175 miles now. Still 10 miles short. What is the wind at Wake Island?" Ryan checked. "East wind at 18 knots. Tailwind. That gives us maybe 4 extra miles." Elena's mind raced through the calculations. Still 6 miles short. She needed more altitude, more glide distance. Then she remembered a technique from her fighter pilot days. a maneuver that stunt pilots used. Dangerous in a commercial aircraft, but they had no choice. "Watch what I do," Elena said. She pushed the yoke forward. The nose dropped. The aircraft accelerated. The airspeed climbed to 280 knots. Then Elena pulled back hard, converting that speed back into altitude in a smooth arc. The aircraft climbed 400 feet before the speed bled off. "What was that?" Ryan asked with amazement cutting through his panic. "Porpoising. We trade speed for altitude, then altitude for distance. We're going to do it again." They porpoised down through 12,000 feet, through 10,000, through 8,000. Each time, Elena timed it perfectly. Push forward, build speed, pull back, gain altitude. At 6,000 feet, Ryan checked their position. Wake Island is 55 miles ahead. "We are actually going to make it." Elena allowed herself a small smile. Making it to Wake Island is only half the problem. We still have to land. Landing without engines, with minimal hydraulic control on an island runway with no margin for error. At 4,000 feet, Elena could see Wake Island through the windscreen. A tiny strip of land in the vast Atlantic Ocean. "Extend landing gear," Elena said. Ryan looked at her in shock. "That will create massive drag. We will drop like a rock." "That is exactly what I want." Ryan extended the landing gear. The plane shuddered as the wheels lowered. They dropped from 4,000 feet to 2,500 feet in less than a minute. Flaps to 30 degrees. Ryan extended the flaps. The nose pitched down hard. 1,500 feet. The runway was right in front of them. Elena leveled the wings and aimed for the numbers at the start of the runway, but they were too high, too fast. With no engines, she had no way to adjust. So, she did something that would fail her in any flight school. She entered a forward slip. She crossed the controls, making the aircraft fly sideways through the air. The fuselage acted like an air brake, presenting its broadside to the wind. The plane shook violently. It felt like it was tearing itself apart. Ryan gripped his armrests, eyes squeezed shut, but Elena held the slip until they were 400 feet above the ground. Then, she kicked the rudder and leveled the wings. They crossed the runway threshold at 180 feet. Way too high, way too fast. The wheels slammed into the concrete at 185 knots. The tires screamed. Elena stood on the brakes with all her weight. "Deploy speed brakes." Ryan pulled the lever. Panels on the wings popped up, creating drag. They rolled down the runway. 140 knots. 120 knots. 100 knots. Elena could see the end of the runway approaching fast. 80 knots, 60 knots, 40 knots. The runway end was 400 feet away, then 200, then 100. The aircraft rolled to a complete stop with 60 feet of concrete remaining. Elena sat back and took her first full breath in what felt like an hour. Ryan was crying. Tears ran down his face while he laughed and cried at the same time. He reached over and grabbed Elena's hand. "We are alive. Oh my God, we are alive." Elena squeezed his hand. "You did good work." Emergency vehicles surrounded the plane. Elena helped Ryan evacuate the passengers. The slides deployed and people poured out, stumbling onto the runway. Some were crying, some were laughing. All of them were alive. Elena was about to exit when she heard something that made her freeze. A voice on the military emergency frequency coming through the cockpit speakers. The transmission was brief, professional, but carried unmistakable recognition. "Razor, this is Falcon 2-1. Outstanding work on that approach. Your signature flying style hasn't changed since Nellis. We've been monitoring your position. Welcome to Wake Island." The voice belonged to an F-22 pilot who somehow knew Elena's old call sign from her days as a test pilot. A call sign that officially didn't exist in any civilian aviation records. How did they know she was here? Elena's blood ran cold. The call sign Razor was classified at the highest levels. Only a handful of people knew it existed, and most of them were dead or buried so deep in Black Project that they might as well be. She keyed the radio with trembling fingers. "Falcon 2-1, this is commercial flight requesting clarification of your transmission." There was a pause. Then the F-22 pilot's voice returned with careful professionalism. "Disregard previous transmission. standard monitoring of emergency landing, outstanding piloting under difficult circumstances. But Elena knew better. The pilot had used her real call sign, mentioned Nellis Air Force Base where she had tested experimental aircraft that didn't officially exist. Someone was watching her, had been watching her since she left the military and assumed her civilian identity. The question was why. Ryan looked at her with confusion. Who was that? Just air traffic control, Elena lied smoothly. Standard procedure for emergency landings. But her mind raced with possibilities. After 5 years of flying commercial routes, her past had found her again. The emergency crews worked with practiced efficiency. Medical teams checked passengers for injuries while fire trucks stood ready despite the engines being cold. Elena supervised the evacuation, counting heads to ensure all 183 souls made it safely off the aircraft. Ryan coordinated with ground control, filing preliminary incident reports that would trigger investigations spanning multiple agencies. But Elena's attention kept drifting to the sky, searching for any sign of the F-22 that had made contact. Wake Island's runway was designed for military operations, not commercial emergencies. The fact that an advanced fighter was monitoring their approach suggested this wasn't coincidence. Someone had been tracking their flight path, possibly since the moment both engines failed over the Atlantic. The passengers were understandably shaken, but grateful. Several approached Elena personally, thanking her for saving their lives with piloting skills they couldn't comprehend. She accepted their gratitude graciously while her mind processed the larger implications. Her cover as a simple commercial pilot had been blown by someone with access to classified information. Hours later, as the sun began to set over Wake Island, Elena found herself alone in the operations center filing mandatory reports. The passengers had been transported to temporary quarters while arrangements were made for their continued journey. Ryan was coordinating with the airline's emergency response team via satellite phone. Elena's fingers paused over the keyboard as she considered how much truth to include in her incident report. The standard aviation investigation would focus on mechanical failure and emergency procedures. No one would question her decision-making or ask about advanced maneuvers not taught in commercial pilot training. But someone already knew the truth about her background. The F-22 pilot's transmission proved that her military service wasn't as buried as she had believed. Her real question wasn't whether her past would surface, but when and in what context. As darkness fell across the Pacific, Elena realized that saving 183 lives might have cost her the anonymity she had worked 5 years to build. Tomorrow would bring investigators, media attention, and questions she wasn't prepared to answer. Elena stepped outside the operations building into the warm Pacific night. Stars filled the sky above Wake Island, the same constellation she had navigated by during classified missions that officially never happened. A figure emerged from the shadows near the runway. Tall, wearing a flight suit with no visible rank or identification. The F-22 pilot who had spoken her call sign. "We need to talk, Razor." The voice matched the transmission from earlier. Elena remained motionless, years of training keeping her expression neutral despite the adrenaline surge. "I think you had me confused with someone else." The pilot stepped closer, moonlight revealing a face she recognized from another life. Colonel Sarah Mitchell, her former squadron commander at Nellis. The woman who had recruited her for projects that existed only in redacted files. "Your emergency landing techniques were impressive, but they revealed capabilities that certain people have been waiting to see again." Elena realized that today's engine failure might not have been as accidental as it appeared. The same people who had erased her military identity were now ready to reclaim her for reasons she couldn't yet understand.